The Megatank, Greenerd's newest superweapon. Introduced in Dual Strike, this lumbering behemoth is the most expensive ground unit you can deploy. And while it is hilarious to watch a single, humongous tank obliterate your enemies, is the Megatank actually any good? Is it a devastating weapon of mass destruction, or just a very slow, funny meme unit that you deploy to insult your opponents in matches you've already won? Well, if you watched my previous video on Neotanks, that is what we will attempt to figure out today. In this video, we ask the following question: are Megatanks worth it? Let's find out. To reach a conclusion, like last time, we first have to take a look at the Megatank as a unit to figure out exactly what we're paying for. In terms of costs, you need 28,000 funds to deploy a Megatank. That's the same price as a battleship. For the same cost, you can get 4 regular tanks, a medium tank and 2 artillery, or a Neotank and 1 artillery. As a unit, the Megatank is extremely slow and clunky. With only 4 move, it has the lowest movement out of any vehicle in the game. In Fog of War, it has a vision range of 1, so it is incapable of doing anything on its own without scouting support. The Megatank has a reserve of 50 fuel and only 3 shots with its primary weapon until it has to be resupplied. The lack of ammo in particular makes the Megatank extremely tricky to use, and very reliant on having a nearby APC. In terms of firepower, the Megatank will obliterate anything on the ground, aside from other Megatanks. Against vehicles, its firepower is so massively overkill that even things such as enemy defense and terrain bonuses will make little difference. Enemy medium and Neotanks will only survive if they're positioned on a property, and even then, only barely. Generally speaking, if a Megatank attacks something, it is very unlikely that what it attacks will survive, and even if it does, there won't be much left of it to attack back. The Megatank is so hilariously powerful that it even deals decent damage against enemy naval units, though if you find yourself using a tank to attack an enemy ship, there's probably something weird going on. Against itself, the Megatank will inflict 65% base damage, so in such a battle the attacker wins, as is the case with most mirror matchups. Against infantry, the Megatank's machine guns will obliterate them most of the time, but funnily enough, like Neotanks, the Megatank cannot reliably interrupt a capture on its own. Against an enemy infantry occupying a property, the Megatank deals 94% base damage. In Dual Strike there's a 10% luck modifier, so with a 94% base damage, it's basically a coin flip whether or not you succeed. Unlike Advanced Wars 2, however, there are so many different ways to increase your firepower in Dual Strike. Any CO power, for example, will boost your damage output by 10%, and you can also get firepower increasing skills to boot, granted that your opponent doesn't get a defensive skill to counter you. Not being able to interrupt captures on its own is pretty surprising for a unit worth 28,000, but that's not really what you should be using a Megatank for in the first place. When taking a look at the Megatank's defenses, this is where it starts to stand out from other ground units. Unlike Neotanks, who hardly have higher defenses compared to medium tanks, the Megatank is actually ridiculously durable. It only takes 15% damage from artillery, and 25% damage from rockets, battleships, and pipe runners. That's actually pretty damn good. Even a bomber, which is designed to hard counter all ground units, only deals 35% damage to it. If you take care to always leave your Megatank on defensive terrain, such as properties, the amount of punishment it can take is astounding. Considering most direct units will not want to go head-to-head with a Megatank due to how hard it fires back, indirect fire is the only reliable way to deal with it, and in order to do that, it does require a lot of focus fire. The Megatank is thus pretty good at soaking up enemy rockets and artillery, and can even do so pretty cost-effectively compared to most of your other vehicles. Sadly, there are ways to counter the Megatank without actually having to fight it. Due to its horrendous mobility, blocking its path with cheap fodder such as infantry is a very viable strategy. While the Megatank is easily able to obliterate any such unit on its own, wasting a turn to attack a unit worth 1,000 funds with one of your own worth 28,000 is not very cost effective. The Megatank is thus very reliant on support from other units such as recons, who can aid its low vision and take out enemy infantry blocking the way. A more unorthodox method of dealing with a Megatank is to intentionally drain its ammo. In many of my matches, I've opted to sacrifice a few low HP recons to make sure the Megatank can't fire with its primary weapons. This makes it a sitting duck until it gets resupplied, as its machine guns will do 0% damage to most of your vehicles. I wouldn't say this is the best way to counter a Megatank, but it is something you can keep in mind. Due to its low movement, you can also choose to simply maneuver around the Megatank. 4 movement is extremely bad, and more often than not, you'll find that the Megatank simply isn't in range of what it wants to attack. Skilled players will pull their valuable units out of range to ensure the Megatank won't deal any damage. This is why COs with movement increasing powers, such as Adder, Cole, and Jess, might utilize Megatanks a little better than the rests. Enemy COs that affect fuel with their powers, such as Olaf and Drake, also hard counters Megatanks. Having your fuel cost double by the snow, or half of it drained away by Drake's tsunami, is going to make things extremely difficult for you unless you have an APC available. When speaking about fuel and ammo, Jess does deserve a special mention. Not only is she a tank-focused commander that boosts the Megatank's already insane firepower, but her CO power also patches off both of its weak points, increasing its movement range and fully resupplying it. When you play as Jess, I would actually say that the Megatank is a solid investment if you can afford it. It's almost like it was made for her specifically. COs that lower deployment costs, such as Colin and Hachi, also makes great use of Megatanks, especially on maps where you don't have that many bases, but still have a decent income. If you use skills to lower deployment cost even further, it's actually surprising how cheap you can make them. Colin's units may suck, but there's nothing more frustrating than suddenly seeing a Megatank on the field when all you can afford are medium tanks. So far, we've established that the Megatank, while being a bit of a niche unit, does have some use. It's very hard to kill and demands an immediate response from your opponent, and one of those responses do need to be addressed: the Black Bomb. Considering there are airports available on the map, the Black Bomb is a perfect counter to the Megatank. Costing 25,000, which is 3,000 less, it can severely shut down any push spearheaded by a Megatank. Granted you don't mess up and get it shot down, the Black Bomb with its superior mobility will most likely hit its target. And if it manages to drain away 5 HP from a Megatank, that's 14,000 funds worth of value from the tank alone. As long as the bomb hit at least a few other units worth an additional 11,000 funds combined, the Black Bomb will earn back its investment, and severely cripple your push in the process. Just be careful if you're playing against Andy, as he can hard counter the strategy with his superpower. You can also try and counter the Black Bomb back with anti-air and missiles, but its high movement makes that very hard to pull off. If your opponent plays wisely, your chances of shooting down their Black Bomb are very slim. If anything, you can attempt to place units in forests and hope the Black Bomb might trap itself, but any skilled player will work around this. Your best bet when fielding a Megatank is therefore to be stealthy, at least in Fog of War. Yeah, it's a little bit ironic considering the Megatank's massive size, but it hides in forests as well as any other units. When deploying a Megatank, do whatever you can to not reveal it to your opponent until it is ready to attack. Utilize forests, count the enemy's vision range, and so forth, and just make sure they don't spot it, or else they might have a Black Bomb ready and waiting in response. So with all this in mind, we arrive at the big question. Are Megatanks worth it? They're expensive, but they hit hard and can take a lot of punishment, but they're also slow, and they run out of fuel and ammo extremely fast, not to mention they require the support of other units to be viable, and a good player can counter them in a myriad of different ways. Well, in most battles, this won't really be a question you have to ask yourself, as you won't be deploying a Megatank for the same reasons you won't be deploying a battleship. You simply can't afford it. But let's say you're playing on a big map with tons of properties, and both players have a lot of funds to play with. In most cases, I'd say spending 28,000 on a single unit is a risky endeavor. But unlike a battleship that can be easily sunk by an enemy submarine, there is no unit, aside from the Black Bomb, that can just immediately shut down a Megatank with a single attack. And thus, I would say there are some situations where I think the Megatank can be useful. If you're in a battle that is a bit of a stalemate on both sides, where your opponent have a lot of indirect combat units set up in key locations, and you find yourself hard-pressed to take ground, a Megatank in the center of the battle, followed by a superpower and a lot of supporting units, can be a winning move. The Megatank can absorb a lot of the initial damage from your opponent, leaving your other units free to move in for the kill on the enemy's indirects. However, to make a push like this worthwhile, you need at least one APC to keep the Megatank supplied. You need recons for vision, and other units like anti-air and tanks to clear away enemy fodder. And if your opponent sees the attack coming and prepares a Black Bomb in response, your push will most likely fail. So my verdict on whether Megatanks are worth it is no. Most of the time they're not. There are too many ways to counter them, their innate weaknesses are a little bit too easy for a skilled opponent to exploit, and if airports are a thing, Black Bombs will hard counter them into oblivion. But unlike medium tanks, Megatanks aren't a core unit, and shouldn't be treated as such. But rather, they fill a very specific niche for very specific situations. Megatanks may not be worth it most of the time, but in a few specific scenarios, a properly deployed Megatank with the proper support can win you the game. Alright, that's what I have to say on this topic. As always, I'd love to hear your opinions. Do you think the Megatank is worth it? Was there anything you feel I missed in this video? Leave it all in the comment section below and I'll respond to as many as I can. Thank you so much for watching yet another silly theory crafting video about a 20-year-old game. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to recruit the like button into the Blue Moon Army by clicking on it. And if you want to subscribe, you'll be notified when I post more Advanced Wars content, whenever that might be. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name has been Mangs, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!